Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be talking about a deck from 2012 called Entei. So this deck actually won Canadian Nats back when that was a tournament that existed in 2012. So a player named Curtis Lyon, Canadian player, a really solid player, also did really well in 2010 World Championships, but he won the Canadian Nationals in 2012 with this deck. Kind of a cool, interesting archetype of this era. One of the only ones that relies on an EX Pokemon that isn't Mewtwo or Darkrai. So let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Entei EX. Entei is a basic. It's got bulky 180 HP. It's pretty good. Definitely better than a lot of the EXs in this format. 3 retreat, which seems like a drawback, but it's actually a benefit that we're going to talk about a little bit later. The weakness, times 2 to water. Pretty irrelevant weakness. There's like no good water Pokemon in this format, to be honest. So that's a great weakness to have. And then Fire Fang, the first attack for a Fire Colorless, does 30, and the defending Pokemon is now burned. So, you know, not super amazing, but there are some Pokemon who... like in this format, there are Pokemon that have power, so being able to shut off a power with a burn is not bad. And like Smeargle is a thing that you can, if you burn it, you shut it off. So if your opponent's kind of bricking and you Fire Fang them, it has some niche uses in some situations, and it's good to get just like some chip damage off. And then also Grand Flame. So Grand Flame is a pretty solid tech as well. So Fire Colorless does 90. Attach a Fire Energy card from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So it's just good acceleration. And then into the late game, having lots of energy on your board just becomes really, really good with Mewtwo. But into solid early chip damage, and then that accelerant as well sets you up into the late game. And you play 2 Mewtwo EX as well. So Mewtwo EX is obviously a really good card in this format. 170 HP, Psychic type, 2 retreat, weakness to Psychic, X Ball. So 2 Colorless does 20 times the number or the amount of energy attached to this Pokemon and the defending Pokemon. So the kind of the idea of the deck is you Grand Flame and you Fire Fang a bunch, and you play a bunch of healing cards, and your Entei stay alive, so that hopefully, like, you know, if you hit a Mewtwo with a Fire Fang, then all of a sudden you can DCE a Mewtwo, and then it knocks out another Mewtwo. So that chip damage actually does come in, and just being able to use Mewtwo EX with Shaymin and Grand Flame, especially when you get into the late game, you have so much energy on board because Grand Flame is just such a great accelerant. But Shaymin, so for... It's got 70 HP, grass type, single retreat, resistant to fighting, and a weakness to fire. Celebration Wind is what is so good with Grand Flame on this card. So Celebration Wind. Once during your turn, when you put Shaymin from your hand into your bench, you may move as many energy cards attached to your Pokemon as you like to any of your other Pokemon. So take all that extra Grand Flame energy that you have on Entei's, or, you know, wherever you put it, probably on an Entei, but literally wherever it is, you can just move it onto a Mewtwo. And in combination with N, this can be a really deadly late game threat. You just got a Mewtwo with, like, you know, 10 energy on it or something, and you're just swinging for 200 damage every turn. Even with an Eviolite, you're killing like everything. So definitely a solid late game plan there. We're not going to talk about Energy Bloom because we don't play the energy. Use that attack. Smeargle, we play one of these as well. This is the guy I was talking about earlier. He's got 70 HP, colorless type, single retreat, and weakness to fighting. Portrait is the power it's so good for. So once during your turn, for your attack, if Smeargle is your active Pokemon, you may look at your opponent's hand. If you do, choose a supporter card you find there and use that effect of that card as the effect of this power. This power can't be used if Smeargle is affected by a special condition. So this is a very interesting difference between abilities and Poke Powers. Because this format plays both, having a relevant support Pokemon that has a power that you can shut off with Fire Fang. Like I was saying earlier, it's really, really nice. Kind of a niche, cool thing that you can do there with Fire Fang. You do play Terrakion as well. Like I was saying, Darkrai EX is a very powerful card in this format. So you play Terrakion just to counter that. 130 HP, fighting type, 4 retreat, weakness to grass, retaliate for a fighting colorless. 30. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from your opponent's attack during his or her last turn, this deck does 16 more damage. We might, I might have been full of crap. We might actually be able to use energy booms. I think this plays Prism. Maybe no, it doesn't. It just plays fighting. So I lied. But that makes sense. You know, just basic fighting. Okay, so getting the supporter cards. 3-4 Professor Juniper makes a lot of sense. You want to get those fire energy in your discard so you can Grand Flame them later in the game. Professor Juniper, discard your hand, draw 7 cards. Really solid draw supporter. And in decks like this where you want energy in this card, it's actually kind of nice to be able to discard your hand. Junk Arm as well makes Professor Juniper such a solid card. So Professor Oak's new theory, you also play 4 of these. So shuffle your hand to your deck, then draw 6 cards. Just a solid draw, shuffle, draw support. A lot of decks play this card. Shuffle, draw 6 is just pretty good. And you also play 2 N. Like I was saying, N is a really powerful late game disruption, but it's also a pretty good early draw. So N, each player shuffles his or her hand to his or her deck, then each player draws cards for each of his or her remaining prize cards. So into the early game, that's a fresh shuffle, draw 6, and into the late game, that allows you to do stuff like that big Mewtwo powered up and then just swinging and not having to worry that much about your opponent's response because you just end them to 1 or 2. So you're playing 4 Junk Armor as well. Junk Armor is a broken trainer card. So discard 2 cards from your hand. So you should discard pile for a trainer card, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. So you can't choose Junk Armor with the effect of this card, but other than that, you can grab every other item / trainer card. Anything that's not a supporter or a stadium, you can snag with a Junk Armor. So Eviolite is one of those cards. You're going to be playing 4 Eviolite because you love to stay alive. The name of the game here is just staying alive until you get massive damage on. You can start 2-shotting with Grand Flame kind of thing, and with potions and Eviolite, that's so much easier. So Eviolite, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is a basic Pokemon, any damage done to this Pokemon by attacks is reduced by 20. So just solid damage reduction there, reduced by 20, can be the difference between, you know, getting 1-shot, 2-shot, or 3-shot. It really depends on what the board looks like, but that damage prevention is a big deal. And then Potion also adds on to that. So you're playing 4 Potion. It's kind of crazy. I don't know of any other deck that played 4 of this card, but 4 Potion, really good card. Heal 30 damage from your Pokemon. So just think of it like this, right? Like, let's say an opposing Mewtwo goes up against you, and you have like 2 energy on an Entei, and they hit you for like 80. That's pretty good. I mean, they're probably going to kill you next turn with a DCE attach, or, you know, whatever they want to do. But if you just have like Potion, Junk Arm, Potion, all of a sudden that threat of getting 2-shot is not there anymore. Or, you know, potion, just if you heal all of it off. It really depends on what you have in your hand, but being able to use double potions and Potion Junk Arm just lets you manipulate your numbers to a point where you're not really afraid of what your opponent's hitting you down with. Like a Darkrai 2-shots usually, but if you use a potion, now all of a sudden it doesn't. So yeah, lots of cool uses for Potion there as well. You also play 3 Pokemon Catcher, really solid card. This is actually an errata, so this card is not accurate. It says flip a coin of heads, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or active Pokemon. But the true card in this era, this is an errata, but the true card it was no flip a coin. So switch one of your opponent's Pokemon with his or her active Pokemon. Really solid, lets you bring up stuff on the bench that your opponent doesn't really want you to have, you know, a Mewtwo that they're powering up, or a Darkrai they're powering up, something like that. And you can just hit it with a, potentially, I mean, it depends what you have on your board, but potentially a Mewtwo, you can hit him with a Fire Fang as well, getting that burn damage. It's not consistent, but it can be good to be, you know, if they hit double tails, all of a sudden they're running into numbers that they might just die back to them out of a Grand Flame. So definitely good to keep in mind. You play 3 Switch as well. Keeping your attackers rotating is important. You play Terrakion, Entei, Mewtwo. So and you also need to get a Smeargle in the active sometimes. So being able to switch is really important. So you play 3 of those and 4 Junk Arm. So lots of opportunities to switch. And you play 3 Energy Switch as well. So this is kind of a cool card in this deck. Just like I was saying with the Mewtwo, you have a lot of ways to power up a Mewtwo and then swing for a lot of damage. But another thing you can do is, you know, switch up your game plan. So let's say you start loading onto an Entei because you think that that's the game plan you want to do, and all of a sudden your opponent drops, you know, Mewtwo double Dark Patch on a Darkrai Shaymin and then starts swinging at you, and you don't have the DCE to respond with the Mewtwo, but you have an energy and an energy switch. You can hit the response, so just it lets you respond to your opponent, kind of whatever they put up. You can kind of have that energy switch to respond. Also important with Terrakion, if your opponent chucks a Darkrai in the active, it's important to be able to hit that energy, because you can't always afford to have the attachment on the Terrakion. Like sometimes you'll have the Terrakion out and you'll get the fighting attach on it, but sometimes you have to just deal with having a fighting attachment on an Entei and then energy switching it, or using Shaymin Celebration when to energy switch it. And knowing what your options are good. 3 energy switch and Junk Arm means you have a lot of opportunities to do that in this deck. So playing 2 Ultra Ball as well, important for discarding fires and also finding Pokemon. So discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for Pokemon, reveal it, and put it in your hand. So just great for finding your tech Pokemon as well as your attackers. Just a solid card overall. You also play 2 Heavy Balls. So this is what I was saying with the Entei retreat coming in. So search your deck for a Pokemon with a tree cost of 3 or more, reveal it, and put it into your hand, shuffle your deck afterwards. So that's great. It just finds you a raw Entei. And you play 4 because you want to find them, obviously, but 2 Heavy Ball and 2 Ultra Ball, as well as Junk Arm, lets you find them, honestly, whenever you need. This deck's super consistent. It got first at Nats. Makes sense that it's and Curtis is honestly a great deck builder, so he definitely knows what he's doing. Because playing 2 Max Potion as well, a lot of healing in this deck. Wow, 6 cards and 4 Junk Arm. So 2 Potion, 2 Max Potion, 4 Potion, and then 4 Junk Arm if you need those as healing as well. So kind of crazy, lots of healing. Heal all damage from one of your Pokemon, then discard all energy attached to that Pokemon. So if you're attacking with something like an Entei, let's say, for example, you can retreat it, and then it has no energy on it, and then you can max it. Or if you have a switch, you can go like switch, use the Celebration Wind, and then you have that damaged Entei. You don't really want that there. So you can just max potion all the energy, or all the damage off of it rather, because you've moved the energy onto something else. So really cool option to have there. Just 2, because it's not as good as potion, to be honest, because you do want to keep the energy on your Pokemon most of the time. But there are a lot of situations where you can afford to just ditch all the energy. It's not like the trade-off for losing a prize is worse than keeping the energy on your board, because you have so much acceleration that it's usually not that big of a deal. Okay, so you play an energy search as well. Search your deck for a basic energy card, reveal it, and put it in your hand. Great for finding fires, but also good for finding that fighting energy if you need to attack with Terrakion. So great for finding that. With Junk Arm, again, you know, it seems kind of inconsistent with one, but with Junk Arm, it lets you get that back later in the game if you need it. So you play a Random Receiver as well. Random Receiver is one of the staple tech item cards in most Junk Arm decks, just because it keeps you consistent, gives you a lot of consistency options. Reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal a supporter card, put it in your hand, and shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So great for finding any draw support. You either get an N, a Pont, or a Juniper. So you're going to be drawing something off of the Random Receiver all the time. And you're also playing a Pluspower, so there are some situations, you know, if you're up against another Mewtwo, you don't have enough energy to hit the counter KO, being able to hit a Pluspower, just having that option is really good. Pluspower, during this turn, your Pokemon's attacks do 10 more damage to the active Pokemon, so it's great for those Mewtwo wars. But also there are some, you know, it really depends on what the board is like, how many burn tails your opponent's has flipped, and, you know, just stuff like that. Like, let's say you hit them for a Fire Fang, right? And you do 30, they flip a Tails, to them it's 50. If they flip another Tails, it's only 25% chance that happens. But if they flip it back to you, that's 70. And then a Full Flame is short of knocking out a Mewtwo. But if you Full Flame with a Pluspower, that hits for 100, which knocks a Mewtwo out. So it really depends on what the board is, but Pluspower is just there to kind of let you manipulate your numbers a little bit. Because getting the energy, we're going to be playing 7 Fires, 2 Fightings, and 2 DCE. So it's kind of a weird energy count. You know, the Fire is obviously important. I think the Fire is fine. But with Energy Search, I think 2 Fighting is also fine. Seems inconsistent, but it's actually not. Because there's only some matchups that you even want to get Terrakion out anyway. And with that energy acceleration on Entei, getting those DCEs aren't as big of a deal. Honestly, I think this is also, it comes down to when the tournament was, right? Because I think that, like, the meta at Canadian Nationals was significantly different than the meta at Worlds, and I think that this list might have developed into a 3 DCE list. I think that 3 DCE could be really good, just because Mewtwo's so important. On the other hand, you can't really use it on Entei. Like, you can put it on an Entei, but it's only bad because your opponent's Mewtwo then gets to abuse it at that point. So I understand why there's only 2, but I think that it's just, like, so important to be swinging back with Mewtwo. Whereas this deck has so much acceleration that it already does that pretty well, but I think DC is also, it's good to just have a DC on the board. Then you can just find a Shaymin Celebration win if you can get a Mewtwo, then you can swing with it. Anyway, this has been Curtis Lyon's Entei Canadian Nationals winning list from 2012. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. We're also doing a giveaway at 500 subscribers. We are slowly climbing our way there. Lots of cool stuff to give away. Got some perlers, maybe a playmat, some dice, some not dice, some some sleeves. That's very different than dice. I don't have dice to give away, but maybe in a future giveaway I have some dice that I can give away. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.